The results loaded at 2:47 in the morning. I wasn't supposed to be awake. I wasn't supposed to be sitting on the kitchen floor in my socks with my laptop balanced on my knees, squinting at a screen that was about to detonate my entire life. I'd done the test on a whim. $29. A little cardboard kit that came in the mail like a birthday card from a company that had no idea what they were handing me. I spit in a tube, sent it back, forgot about it for 3 weeks. And then the email came. Your results are ready. I almost didn't open it that night. Almost left it for morning, for coffee, for a moment when my brain was awake enough to process ethnicity percentages and distant cousin matches. But the number at the top of the screen stopped me cold. Close family matches, 1. I leaned in. The name on the screen was not my father's name. Robert Allen Whitfield. 48% shared DNA. Predicted relationship, father or half-sibling. I read it 3 times. I read it 3 more times after that. My brain kept sliding off the words like they were written in a language it refused to learn. I scrolled up, scrolled down, checked the email address to make sure I was looking at my account and not someone else's. My name was right there at the top. My birth date. My kit number. Robert Allen Whitfield. I didn't know anyone named Robert Allen Whitfield. My father's name was David Marcus Cole. He was sitting 60 feet away from me, down the hall, in the bedroom he'd shared with my mother for 31 years, completely unaware that his daughter was on the kitchen floor, trying to remember how to breathe. I clicked on the profile. It was private. No photo. No family tree. No bio. Just a username. R. Whitfield 1962, and agreeing that meant the account was active, meaning he was real, meaning whoever he was out there, breathing, living, and sharing almost half my DNA while my father slept down the hall thinking he knew exactly who I was. I closed the laptop, sat in the dark for a long time. Then I opened it again, because there was no version of that night where I didn't open it again. I sent a message through the site. 3 sentences. My hands were shaking so hard I had to type it twice. Hello, my name is Mara Cole. I think we might be related, and I'm trying to understand how. Professional. Calm. The opposite of what was happening inside my chest. I didn't sleep. At 6 a.m., my dad walked into the kitchen in his robe, saw me still on the floor, and said, "Mara, what are you still doing up?" And I looked at the man who had coached every single one of my soccer games, who had driven 11 hours straight when I called him crying from a college dorm room, who had walked me down the aisle 4 years ago with tears on his face that were so genuine they still lived in the back of my throat when I thought about them. And I said, couldn't sleep. He made coffee, kissed the top of my head, left for work, and I sat there with the taste of that lie in my mouth like a stone I couldn't swallow. The message was answered 6 hours later. I was at work, staring at a spreadsheet that could have been written in ancient Greek for all the sense it made to me, when my phone buzzed. Robert Whitfield has responded to your message. My heart did something violent. I went to the bathroom, locked the stall, opened the app. Mara, I've been waiting for a message like this for a long time. I think we should talk by phone if you're comfortable with that. I know this must be a lot to process. I'm sorry you're finding out this way. I always hoped if this day came, it would be different. That last line. I always hoped if this day came, it would be different. He knew. He already knew. I sat on a toilet in a work bathroom for 11 minutes reading that message over and over until my legs went numb and my coworker knocked on the door to ask if I was okay. I said yes. I was not okay. I called him that night from my car, parked 2 blocks away from my own house, engine running, heater on, phone pressed so hard against my ear it left a mark. He answered on the second ring. His voice was careful, warm in the way that people are warm when they're also terrified. Mara, yeah. My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. It's me. Silence. Not an awkward silence. A weighted one. The kind where someone is choosing every word like they're defusing something. I don't know where to start, he said. The beginning, I said. Start at the beginning. And he did. His name was Robert Whitfield. He was 62 years old. He lived in Asheville, North Carolina. He was retired. He had 2 grown sons. He had been married twice. And 32 years ago, when he was 29 and my mother was 26, they had worked together at a marketing firm in Atlanta for 8 months before she left to move back to Ohio. We were together, he said. Briefly. It was complicated. She was seeing your father, David, at the same time. I didn't know that at first. I said nothing. When she left, she didn't tell me she was pregnant. I found out about a year later through a mutual friend who mentioned she'd had a baby. I did the math. He paused. I reached out. She told me David was the father. That she was sure. That I needed to leave her family alone. And you believed her? Another pause. Longer this time. I wanted to. It was easier to believe her. I had my own life. I was young. I told myself she knew and she was sure, and I had no right to push. He exhaled. I've regretted that decision every year since. I was gripping the steering wheel with my free hand, so hard my knuckles were pale in the dark. Did she know? I asked. Did my mother know you might be my father? The silence before he answered was the longest one yet. Yes, he said. She knew there was a possibility. I drove home in a fog so thick I almost ran a red light. I parked, sat in the driveway, watched the light in my parents' bedroom window like it belonged to strangers. My mother was inside that house. She was probably watching television, probably had her tea, probably had no idea that in the last 24 hours the story she had written for our family had been quietly dismantled by a cardboard kit and $29 and a man in Asheville who had spent 30 years wondering. I went inside. She was on the couch. Gray robe. Mug of tea. Exactly as I'd imagined. She looked up when I came in. You look pale. You okay? I did one of those DNA tests, I said. My voice was flat. I hadn't planned what to say. The words just came out like they'd been waiting at the door. The ancestry kind. Her face did something. A tiny thing. A flicker so fast that if I hadn't been looking for it, hadn't been standing there primed and wrecked and watching every millimeter of her expression, I would have missed it. But I didn't miss it. Oh, she said. Her voice was casual. Rehearsed casual. The kind of casual that has been practiced. I got my results back. I sat down in the chair across from her. I got a close family match. Someone with 48% shared DNA. She set her mug down. His name is Robert Whitfield, I said. And my mother's face broke. Not dramatically. Not the way it happens in movies where someone crumbles and confesses everything in a rush of tears. It was quieter than that. More devastating than that. It was the face of someone who had carried something very heavy for a very long time and had just watched it fall out of their hands in a way they could not stop. Mara, don't. The word came out hard. Don't start with my name like that. Don't try to manage me right now. Just tell me the truth. She looked at her hands, then at me. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. Holding it together by the last thread a person has when everything else is already gone. It was a very difficult time, she started. Don't. I said it again. Softer, but no less firm. Don't explain the context first. Just answer the question. Did you know he might be my father when I was born? A tear ran down her left cheek. She didn't wipe it. Yes, she said. One word. 32 years. I stood up. Not because I had somewhere to go. Because my body refused to stay still. I walked to the window, stared at the street, watched a neighbor's porch light flicker in the November cold like it was the only normal thing left in the world. How did you decide? I asked. My voice was quiet now. Quiet is sometimes worse than loud. How did you decide that David was my father? I wanted him to be, she said. I love David. I wanted our family. I made a choice. You made a choice for me. You weren't born yet. I am now. I turned around, looked at her. I have been for 32 years. And for 32 years you've let me live inside a story you knew might be wrong. She was crying now. Properly. Quietly. The kind of crying that has no performance in it. That's just grief leaking out because there's nowhere else for it to go. I thought it was the right thing, she said. I thought if I chose our family, we would be a family. And we were. We are. Does Dad know? The pause before she answered was its own answer. No, she said. I left the room. I went upstairs. Sat on the edge of my old bed in my old childhood room that still had a poster on the wall from a band I stopped listening to in high school. And I sat there thinking about my father, David, my dad. The man who had driven 11 hours and walked me down an aisle and made me coffee that morning, and what this information would do to him if it landed on him the way it had landed on me. And then I thought about Robert in Asheville, who had done the math, who had reached out, who had spent 30 years wondering if the woman who left Atlanta was carrying his child. Two men. One of them had raised me. One of them had made me. And I was holding a truth that would detonate both of their lives, and I had not asked to hold it. I called my husband. He was still up, working late, and when he heard my voice he said, "What's wrong?" Before I even said a word. 6 years together, and he could read me across a phone line like a map he'd memorized. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt. He listened the way he always listened, like what you were saying was the only thing in the world worth hearing. When I finished, there was a long breath on his end of the line. "Do you want me to come over?" he asked. We had our own place across town. I'd come to my parents for Sunday dinner and fallen into a landmine. "No," I said. "I don't know what I want." "That's okay," he said. "You don't have to know tonight. I have to decide whether to tell my dad." Silence. "Yeah," he said. "You do. Not you should. Not you shouldn't. Just, you do." Because he knew me well enough to know that I already knew I couldn't carry this indefinitely, that it would eat me from the inside, that every holiday and phone call and cup of kitchen coffee would have this thing underneath it like a fault line I was constantly walking across. "What would you do?" I asked. "I'm not you," he said. "I know. What would you do?" Another long pause. I'd tell him, but I'd hate myself for it on the days he was falling apart. And I'd hate myself more for not telling him on the days I was pretending everything was fine. "So either way, I hate myself. Either way, it costs something," he said. "The question is who pays." I didn't sleep again that night. My mother knocked on the door around midnight. I told her I needed space. She said she understood. She stood outside the door for a moment anyway, the way she used to when I was a kid and had a bad night, like her being close to the door was the next best thing to being allowed in. Then I heard her walk away. I spent 3 days researching. Not Robert. Not DNA science. Myself. I read every forum thread I could find written by people who had gone through exactly this. NP communities, not parent expected. A term I hadn't known existed a week before that now felt like it had been waiting for me my whole life. There were thousands of them. Thousands of people who had spit in a tube for fun and found out that the ground under their family was made of something different than they'd been told. Some of them had told their fathers. Some hadn't. Some had built relationships with their biological parents. Some hadn't. Some said it set them free. Some said it destroyed them. None of them said it was easy. None of them said they wished they could unknow it. That last part was the only clarity I found in 3 days of looking. I didn't wish I could unknow it. I talked to Robert 2 more times that week. Shorter calls. Getting to know you calls that felt profoundly surreal, like a first date and a funeral at the same time. He sent me a photo. A man with gray hair and a wide jaw and eyes that were my eyes. I held the phone and looked at those eyes for a long time. He had 2 sons. My half-brothers. They didn't know about me yet. He was waiting on my lead. He made that clear every call. "This is your timeline," he said. "I've already had 30 years to process the possibility. You've had a week. I'm not going anywhere." He was patient in a way that felt earned rather than performed. And that killed me a little, because I hadn't expected to like him. I'd expected him to be either a monster or a ghost, and he was neither. He was just a man who had made a young man's mistake 32 years ago and had lived with the question mark ever since. I told my mom I was going to tell my dad. We were sitting in the kitchen. She had her tea. I had coffee. It was painfully familiar. She closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, they were tired in a way that wasn't just lack of sleep. "I know," she said. "You're not going to try to talk me out of it." Would it work? No. Then no. She wrapped both hands around her mug. "I've known this was coming since you said his name. Maybe I've known it was coming for 32 years, and I just kept looking away from the door it would walk through. Why didn't you ever tell him?" "When I was young. Before it became this." She was quiet for a long time. "Because every year that passed made it harder. The first year I thought about it and didn't. The second year it had already been a year. By the time you were 5 it had been 5 years, and I had convinced myself that the man who was your father in every way that mattered was your father. Period. And that the alternative was a wound that would destroy everything I'd built. You built it on a maybe. I built it on a choice," she said firmly. Not defensive, just clear. "And I'd make the same choice again for different reasons, and I hate myself for that." I told my dad on a Saturday morning. He was in the garage, working on the car he'd been restoring for 3 years, the one that was always almost done, the one that had become a joke in our family about how Dad would finish it right around the time he retired. And he was retired now, so the joke had outlived its punchline. He looked up when I came in, smiled that easy smile, wiped his hands on a rag. "Hey, kiddo, hand me that wrench." I picked up the wrench, held it, didn't hand it to him. He looked at my face. The smile went somewhere else. "What's wrong?" And I told him. I told him about the test, about the name, about Robert. About the phone calls. About Mom. I told him all of it, standing in his garage next to his almost finished car, holding a wrench I never handed over. He didn't say anything for a very long time. He sat down on the stool he kept by the workbench, put his elbows on his knees, stared at the concrete floor. I stood there and watched my father receive the worst information of his life, and I felt like I had thrown it at him, which I had, even though I hadn't had a choice, which didn't make it feel any different. Are you sure? He said finally. 48% shared DNA, I said. It's not ambiguous. He nodded, slowly, like his neck had forgotten how to work quickly. Your mother knew, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes. He nodded again. Okay, he said. Just okay. I didn't know what to do with that. I'd prepared for rage, for tears, for him to throw something or walk inside or tell me to get out. I had not prepared for okay, because okay was its own kind of devastation. It was the sound of a man rebuilding his entire past in real time in complete silence. Dad, I need a minute, Mara. His voice was careful, controlled in a way that cost him enormously. I'm not. I need a minute. Okay. I set the wrench down on the workbench. I'll be inside. I walked to the door that connected the garage to the house, paused with my hand on the frame. You're still my dad, I said. My voice broke on the last word. That hasn't changed for me. Not one single bit. He didn't answer, but his shoulders, which had been up around his ears since I'd started talking, came down about an inch. I went inside. My mother was in the kitchen. She looked at my face and knew. Neither of us said anything. We just sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd done my homework for 12 years and eaten 1,000 Sunday dinners and been a person who knew who she was, and we waited together for the sound of my father's footsteps. They came 20 minutes later. He walked past the kitchen without looking in, went down the hall, went into their bedroom, closed the door. Not a slam, a close, which was also its own thing to sit with. My mother got up. I watched her walk down the hall. I watched her stand outside the bedroom door the same way she had stood outside my door. I watched her knock once softly. I watched the door open, and I watched my father, who was still my father, who would always be my father in the way that counts first, let her in. The door closed. I sat at the table alone and let myself fall apart for exactly as long as I needed to, which turned out to be about 45 minutes, which was both longer and shorter than I'd expected. Then I called Robert. I told him. I said when he picked up. He was quiet for a moment. How did it go? I don't know yet, I said. Maybe it went the only way it could. Maybe it went wrong. Maybe both. Are you okay? I think I will be, I said. Are you? A surprised beat. Like no one had asked him that. Yeah, he said. I think I will be too. We talked for a while about nothing in particular. About Asheville. About my job. About his garden. Slow, careful talk. The kind you have when you're two people standing at a beginning that might become something or might stay exactly what it is, and both options are fine, and neither is a loss. It's been 7 months. My parents are still together. I won't dress that up as easy because it hasn't been. My dad and I still have coffee. He still asks about work. He still texts me terrible puns on Tuesday mornings because terrible Tuesday puns have been his thing since I was 9 years old. But there are silences now that didn't used to be there. Pockets of air between us where there used to be something solid. We're building around them. I don't know if they go away or if you just learn where they are. I've met Robert twice in person. Once for lunch in a neutral city between us. Once at his house in Asheville, where his garden was exactly what I'd imagined from the way he talked about it. His sons know about me now. That's its own story. We're taking it slow, carefully, the way you handle something you don't want to drop. I think about the night I opened the email a lot. I think about how close I came to closing the laptop and leaving it for morning. I think about all the mornings I'd already had with my father that were real, even if the story under them wasn't what I thought. I think about all the mornings I still get to have. I think about my mother, who made a choice when she was 26 years old that was wrong in the way that a lot of young, scared, human choices are wrong. Not evil, just myopic, just the vision of a person who could only see as far as the thing they were afraid to lose. I think about how long she carried it. I think about how I'll never fully know if that weight shaped her into a more careful person or just a more tired one. I don't have clean answers. I don't think clean answers were ever on the table. But here's the thing I come back to. The question I can't stop turning over, not because it has an answer, but because it doesn't. If your mother made a choice that protected your family and fractured your identity, and lived with the consequences of that choice silently for 3 decades, and the family she built was real and loving and yours, was the lie a betrayal of you, or a gift she gave herself at your expense? And if you're not sure, if you hold both of those things at the same time without being able to choose, if you love her and are furious at her in the same breath every single day, what does that say about you? What does that say about all of us and the stories we let stand because the truth would cost too much?